Hello, I'm Jerry Bird Tart. I'm a psychotherapist in the Orlando area, and I want to share with you today a little bit about the impact of trauma on counselors and clients. Because we know what trauma is like, I would submit that at some point or the other, most of us have dealt with a trauma survivor as a client. Um, Also, I know that we may have experienced trauma ourselves in some way or the other. There's a thing that's called secondary trauma that may be of a concern because sometimes when we're dealing with other people's stuff and we try to process their information, it can impact our view of the world and or affect us personally and professionally. So we're going to start with understanding the definition of trauma, which is any disturbing experience that results in significant fear, helplessness, confusion, other disruptive feelings, as well as dissociation. We talk a lot about PTSD in recognizing trauma because PTSD is a serious condition that can develop develop after a person has experienced or witnessed traumatic or terrifying events. We also know that sometimes it's very difficult for the traumatic memories of these events to dissipate. And as a result of that, they continue with the individuals. So when you're dealing with a client who may be struggling with PTSD, or even as a counselor, having gone through your life situations, you may have been diagnosed with PTSD. And sometimes other people's traumatic events can be triggerers for you. So it's to raise your level of awareness. There's another part of trauma that I wanted to just speak a little bit about, which is called dissociation. And it's a way in which it is that individuals will organize and or compartmentalize experiences that happens in their lives. Sometimes the trauma can be so significant that individuals believe that they have had out-of-body experiences. Like you may have heard individuals talking about maybe having a near-death experience, or they felt that they had died and they could see themselves from a elevated place. That could very easily be dissociativeness or dissociation. I'm not asking you to be a therapist, but I am saying that in your line of work and as it relates to the things that you guys put in place regarding your guidelines and your boundaries, it's important that when clients come in, sometimes they may be in different levels of trauma that has and or has not been diagnosed, but their behavior towards you could be off-putting. So when we talk about the impact of trauma, trauma is indeed a worldwide problem. It is dangerous, it can be very dangerous, and it certainly is very costly. The thing to recognize as well is that it has no boundaries. Nobody is exempt from trauma. Everybody in some regard or the other could have been confronted with trauma. And whether they've called it trauma or not, it doesn't negate the fact that it was trauma. Also, individuals who have mental illnesses can be continuously traumatized because of their chronic condition, as well as individuals who may be continual substance abuse users. Traumatic events can occur from different places. Human behavior can create traumatic events because there is rape, there's wars, there's greed, there is senseless killings, there is just a disregard for human life, and we see that frequently. Individuals may have also experienced trauma because of industrial kinds of concerns, whether it was a hazardous material accident, or even, just as I said, with human behavior, just greed There are economic downsizes that have caused significant traumatic events. It affects our economy as well as our environment and our population. And additionally, we also know that there are natural disasters, and these kinds of traumatic events can change so many parts of individuals' lives or our lives. It can cause us to be homeless if we've never experienced that before, and those that may have been, they become even more devastated as a result of the floods or the hurricanes or earthquakes or fires. Even climate change in some regards, because of the weather changing, individuals that may have had crops or those kinds of things, those things don't come into play as they may have been. And then we can see that again as it relates to the economy and how prices are going up. So that's very traumatic nowadays. With post-traumatic experiences, some of the responses to be understood is that it is a stressor that exists regularly, continually, and it affects daily functions when people are struggling with PTSD. It's on a continuum scale or spectrum, as it were. It's like they can't dismiss it from their lives because of the intensity of it, or there are so many triggerers that they don't know how to allow it not to be a part of their lives. The fears or the nightmares or the emotional horrors that they may have seen, experienced, or whatever, or heard. And then what happens is that learned behavior can result from the traumatic experiences that they've had, and it's difficult to trust their environment, to trust society, to trust that justice will reign, to trust that good will overshadow evil. Sometimes PTSD can be so overwhelming that individuals just truly deny that they have it because they see it becomes then a defense mechanism for them. In our understanding trauma, and for you as counselors, and you're dealing with people every day, you recognize too, there's some people that come in and talk with you, they're traumatized and you don't necessarily know what to do, or you want to know what to do. It is and can be more often than not both emotional, and it presents itself with behaviors that are unsettling sometimes, but it's also has its physical effects. It can affect us physiologically. People can come in and they've not slept, or they've not eaten, or they're over the top because they're having anxiety attacks or whatever. Understanding that trauma presents itself in more than one way. There's also 3 recognizable levels of trauma. So I want to tell you a little bit about that. Not that you are going to, again, be therapists, but as you understand some of the levels of trauma, then that can help you better determine how it is that you're going to work with that client. Level 1, the client demonstrates minimal emotional stimulation, but they're telling you about an event that was very traumatic, but their affect is flat. They may have little or no facial expressions. Their emotions may be very flat or without any real volume to their voices. They answer questions very softly or whatever. To put this in layman terms, what I'm trying to say is that they're telling you what they think that you want to hear, because they're trying to determine am I supposed to look under these circumstances, whether they're dealing with trauma or not. The level 2 of trauma is when the individual is saying that they are managing the trauma. They're telling you things that make sense, but their action speaks louder than their words. They may be more demonstrative, their legs may be shaking, their hands may be flailing. They may be in this state where they are maybe even re-experiencing the trauma to some degree, but they are wanting not to show that part, okay? And then they're are those individuals who will come, and this is level 3, where they are in the moment. They are literally in the moment. They are crying. They can't contain themselves. They may be yelling. They may be standing. They may be pacing. They may be rocking. They may be asking as if you were the very person who may have been in this traumatic experience with them or whatever. So in that, under those conditions or that circumstance, the individuals truly mentally and sometimes even physically, I've seen individuals who have responded to backfires as if they were gunshots or whatever. So they've hidden themselves. So that's a piece that is important to understand as individuals present to you. There are circumstances that you're going to see, and I want you to understand what's going on with them. Now, I talked with you early on about dissociation, and dissociative presentations could be when individuals will agree, they're on point, they're clear, they're going to do exactly what your protocol is, and they've signed up for it and whatever. But when you start giving them their homework assignments or asking them pertinent questions that requires their behaviors to change or their lifestyles to change, you may find that they are shutting down. Or if they have more than one session with you, they may have been very destructive in between sessions, in that whatever it is that you may have asked them to do, i.e. setting up a budget, minimizing their spendings, or whatever it is that you're doing to assist them to reach the goal that they have agreed to on paper, but they may have decided that it is too difficult for them, so they shut down, or they may just disengage with you altogether. So they have decided that it may be more than they can handle. So expect that. There are other responses to trauma where there's reactions to, certain emotions that are very difficult, and they are not predictable necessarily. It's difficult for you to predict. It depends on the age of the person, how close they are to the trauma, or how recent it may have occurred in their lives. Also, their social support. How is it that they are hearing others talk to them about themselves? Some people see trauma as a badge of courage. Other people see trauma as something that they can't deal with. Therefore, they are perceived, or they believe that they are perceived as weaklings. So listen to how they say that they understand trauma, or how they say they see themselves as a result of dealing with trauma. And there are individuals who do have mental health issues, or they have family members who have mental health issues, and they have had to work hard to try to deal effectively with them. And they may be manifesting circumstances that are not seemingly aligned with what it is that you're telling them, as if they can't understand what you're talking about. So it may be important for you to ask even that question: am I making myself clear? Did you understand what I was trying to say? And if they agree and they say, yes, I do understand, then that's a great thing. Then there are those others who see trauma as an effort to make themselves better. They are responsive. They demonstrate resilience and flexibility. And they, because of their faith and their information, their mind change, they see themselves in a better position. Also, regulating the intensity of trauma has a lot to do with how the person is speaking to you versus how you're speaking to them. If they are intense and over the top, then you want to have soft voices. Be clear about your boundaries. Ask them to respect that. And if they are not giving you the energy that you need, then you can be more direct to them in terms of asking them to talk about the trauma. I hope this has been in some way helpful for you. Please take care. Blessing.